Waar die wilgers welig spruit, doringboom sy skadu sprei, soos ons groei in kundigheid, mag U ons lei. Sien ons hoe hier lei met die hand, laat U sien rus oor ons land. Three strong streams unite to flow, Africa stands proud and tall. As we learn, we trust, we know, God is in control. Bless us, O Lord, guide us with grace. May Northwest be blessed always. Bless us, O Lord, seal us in. Ore Jehovah temporena, seal ons, bless us, O Lord. Bogone bupirima, reka ele morena, kawena reka ema, ratswarana. Ah, morena, urrijoche, lisedi rijoroche. Waar die wilgers welig spruit, doringboom sy skadu sprei, soos ons groei in kundigheid, mag U ons lei. Sien ons hoe hier lei met die hand, laat U sien rus oor ons land. Three strong streams unite to flow, Africa stands proud and tall. As we learn, we trust, we know, God is in control. Bless us, O Lord, guide us with grace. May Northwest be blessed always. Bless us, O Lord, seal us in. Ore Jehovah
Testing.
temporena, seal ons, bless us, O Lord.
Okay, welcome all of you to this floor awareness session today. For those who don't know me, I'm Madeleine van der Merwe, Director Internal Audit, and with me I've got from Special Investigations Unit, the Audit Manager, Said Mutara, and then the Senior Internal Auditor, Shagri Adams. Okay, just for the beginning and just to sympathize, we had a colleague who life was taken away over the weekend, and can we just allow 5 minutes of silence? Not 5 minutes, 30 seconds silence for John van der Merwe. Okay, thank you everyone. Okay, this fraud awareness session events form part of the International Fraud Awareness Week, which encourages business leaders and our employees to proactively take steps to minimize the impact of fraud by promoting anti-fraud awareness. The fraud awareness is very crucial in the fight against crime, and on average, organizations lose about 5% of their revenue due to fraudulent activities. This session is dedicated to all of you attending here today, on live and on stream, and those sitting here in front of me, to recognize, prevent, and combat fraud in all its forms and serve the following important purposes. Okay, to share with employees different types of fraud that occur in practice and within the university. By understanding what fraud looks like, employees are better equipped to recognize and report suspicious activities. By raising awareness, these sessions help prevent fraud by occurring in the first place. People like yourself can learn about the common tactics used by fraudsters and how to avoid falling victim to them. Most of you are in positions as financial persons and managers where a lot of trust is placed in your position to allow and prevent the capturing of transactions and be vigilant in preventing unusual irregular activities which can lead to losses for the university. Employees are often the first line of defense, and usually at the Combined Assurance Forum, this is very important. The first line of defense is the people capturing the transactions and the managers who approve, and then you have your second level, third level internal audit and internal reviews. Fourth level is external auditors, and then government regulation. So training you to detect early warning signs can lead to quicker identification and resolution of fraudulent activities. So that is our big aim. These sessions reinforce the importance of ethical behavior and integrity within the workplace, and they help create a culture where honesty and transparency are valued. Regular fraud awareness training helps to ensure that the university complies with legal and regulatory requirements. It also protects the university from potential legal prosecution associated with fraud. And there, James is sitting here with us today. You will all know that the cost, once we lose all the money, and then to do the investigations, there's a lot of time and cost related to that. And then also when we do the court cases, a lot of money is lost by the university. And at the end, only a little amount of that money we can actually recover because it's already spent and used. Okay, this also empowering employees with the knowledge and tools to combat fraud will make you feel confident and engaged in your roles. It fosters a sense of responsibility and vigilance. Effective fraud prevention and detection can significantly reduce financial losses associated with fraudulent activities. Organizations that invest in fraud awareness training often see a return on investment through reduced fraud incidents. Okay, the outcome of these sessions aims to build a robust defense against fraud, create a safer, more secure working environment, and also ensure sustainability of the university on the long term. Okay, we are honored to have our experts from Nexus Forensics and the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigations joining us today. Currently, they are working in close collaboration with the university on recent cases reported to SAPS during 2024. They will share their insight and experience in tackling these complex fraud cases. We look forward to the next two sessions, and I already would like to thank you for your commitment and dedication to fraud awareness and prevention and working closely with the university. Okay. Then our first guest speaker is Advocate Francois Labuschagne, the Director, Nexus Forensics. Francois started his career at the Department of Justice, where he worked for 22 years before he resigned as a Senior State Advocate at the Directorate of Special Operations, formerly known as the Scorpions. He then joined the Pretoria Society of Advocates, where he practiced as private counsel for nearly 10 years. Whereafter he joined Nexus Forensic Services as a director in 2012, specializing in forensic investigations, fraud, risk, and compliance. He is an accredited training and facilitator in several unit standards related to investigations and combat of corruption and commercial crime. He is a certified fraud examiner with the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners and accredited forensic practitioner with the ICFP. Nexus Forensic Services is a leading forensic firm in South Africa, established since 2006. They offer comprehensive range of services aimed at fraud and corruption deterrence, prevention, and response. Their expertise includes investigating financial discrepancies and fraud, conducting thorough investigations into various types of fraud, assisting with legal processes and resolving disputes, addressing issues related to digital fraud and cyber threats, and utilizing data to detect and prevent fraudulent activities. Okay, each presenter have more or less an hour for their presentation. So it will indicate about after 50 minutes that you can just close your presentation and allow 5 minutes for questions, and then we will move over to the next presenter. So a warm welcome to Advocate Labuschagne. You may continue with your session. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeleine. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to those of you who joins us on the live stream as well. My session is about the risk of believing. Thank you, Shwadri. The risk of believing. Today I want to talk about the risk of being a believer. Rest assured, I'm not going to talk about religion or faith. However, both these elements could influence the success rate of your internal audit program. Whether you doubt and whether you believe could play an important role in the way that you perform your functions. During one of our regular performance assessments, I asked one of my investigators what would he consider to be a weak point in his performance. And he replied, to my shock, I am a believer. He carried on to state that when he interviews somebody, he would ask, for instance, for documentary proof, and then he believes that the person will send it later to him. He accepts that. He doesn't follow up with a confirmatory email or call a day or two later. He believes that it will come. And often it takes a week or a little bit of pushing from behind before he picks up a phone or types an email and then requests the information that he had asked for. And my question is, are we not all believers in some or other way? At a young age, we believe what our parents tells us. We believe our school teachers, and later on we believe our professors and our lecturers. The fact of the matter is that we are naturally inclined to believe in the good of people until we are proven wrong. Now, the question is that a bad thing? Is it a bad thing to believe or to believe in the good of people? Not necessarily. But in the audit world, it could potentially be a bad thing. It could be detrimental to what you are doing. If you go and start your audit program, your audit plan, with a preposition of, I believe what is placed in front of me. Because then you merely become somebody who makes tick marks and you do not question. You check the processes and you check for compliance. Let me just see if I can get our system going. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk about the reputation of believing the difference between internal audit and forensic audit, a little bit about fraud and corruption. I do not want to take any claim from the next speaker who's going to talk about fraud and corruption, being the experts in that. And then I'm going to leave you with some final thoughts. Now, if we look at what Howard Putnam said about business assets, he talks about people, integrity, and ethics. And there's a whole philosophy on why we believe in things or people. But for purpose of our discussion, we can simply say that we believe because it creates a framework for whatever we do. Our default starting block in life sometimes is that we believe that people will obey rules because it's the right thing to do. We hear it every now and then, do the right thing. And we start to believe that everybody obeys this basic rule. We believe people will have integrity and that they will act ethically. And yet, we've got so many examples of people not doing that, not living by means of ethical thinking driven by integrity or doing the right thing. I often think that we are conditioned by society to believe that people will automatically do the right thing, but they don't. And my question is, with regards to internal audit and investigation of commercial crime, is this not the very same default starting block that prevents internal audit to detect fraud in its many disguises? The fact that we believe what we are being presented with. Now, there's a risk when you believe, and that is a reputational risk for the university or the institution where you work. Because if you are a believer, you open yourself and your institution to that reputational risk that may occur, that fraud or that corruption that may occur, that will be detrimental to the image of your institution. And it will be a crisis. Believe me, it will be a crisis when that happens. You will see people trying all sorts of things to try and mitigate that crisis. But the fact is, later on, you will be judged by your actions and the decisions and how you responded to that crisis the moment it occurs. Now, from many real cases that our firm had been part of, many cases that I personally prosecuted, I learned that fraudsters, corrupt people, officials bargain on the mindset of internal audit or the mindset of the compliance officer or the mindset of the inspector to believe that people will do the right thing or that they will be presented. It's only when there's a report made or when something becomes so clear that there's a possible fraud that we start becoming suspicious, that we move from a believing mindset to a suspicious mindset. And then when it is suspicion, it is not yet factual, it's not yet proven by evidence, it is only a suspicion. And at that stage, the question always arises, is this now worth investigating? Do I need to pursue this? Do I need to ask more questions? And the answer is obviously yes, you need to. Because the fraudsters, the corrupt people, they devise their plans to such an extent to extort the maximum benefit from this absent mindset of asking the question. And this is actually the first phase of the crisis. We need to move to a culture where we approach internal audit with a view to detect, with a view to respond vigorously and to prevent this reputational crisis that will occur. We must adjust our audit plan to provide for this approach. We cannot just simply be compliance-driven, checking the processes and waiting for the allegation to surface before we investigate. We must be alive that fraud can hide in every dark corner of every transaction that you are checking, that you are auditing. There's a possibility, and one must perform your duties with that mindset. See, the clicker is a little bit slow. John Stewart said, if you don't stick to your values when they are being tested, they are not values, they are hobbies. If you do not do what you said you're going to do, you may as well not do it at all. So there's a difference between internal audit and forensic audit, and you may argue that you are not conducting forensic audits because your role is different. However, the difference between internal audit and forensic audit only lies in timing, purpose, and outcome. The internal audit check for processes, audit processes. They check for compliance, and they strengthen controls. They test the health of your organization, and they aim to provide or to prove efficiency. Whereas forensic audit is a little bit different. In forensic audit, you test specific transactions. You zoom in to that specific transaction. What is the underlying cause for the transaction? What is the supporting documentation for that transaction? And you check and you validate. Now, there's a difference between verification and validation. If I could use an example, if you travel from Potch to Cape Town, you use a GPS and you punch in the waypoints on your way to Cape Town. And you would punch in the different cities or towns that you're going to pass. And as you travel, you can see the names of the towns coming up on your GPS. And you look at it and you basically verify that the GPS is working. It's picking up the signal. I am in a town and I'm passing this town, and the GPS tells me it is Bloemfontein. Now I've verified. But if you validate, you will stop and you will ask somebody, is this indeed Bloemfontein? Yes. Now you know your GPS is working. You validated the mechanics of that instrument. So verification is one thing, validation is another thing. And we must move to validate transactions that seems out of the ordinary. Then we must collate evidence for that particular transaction that we investigate, if you perform your forensic investigation. You reconstruct past events. And you do so with the purpose of litigation or prosecution in mind. You aim to procure evidence of the wrongdoing. It's a reactionary response. Forensic audit is always a reaction to a suspicion. Something prompted the forensic investigation, whereas your internal audit is not reactionary. You do not react to suspicion. You are a step back prior to the reaction. You are actively looking for this type of transaction that would later becomes a forensic investigation. So there are different methods to be used by internal audit and forensic audit. And it is clear that internal audit and forensic audit are different. In internal audit, you check human behavior. You check, was this expense in accordance with the policy? Was this expense authorized? Was this the expense incurred after all the steps had been complied with? You check the human behavior, whether this person complied with the rules. You check the processes, and you do financial comparisons to check the progress or regress of your organization. Forensic audit is different in that you use forensic tool sets which you do not have or use normally in your forensic audit, in your internal audit program. In forensic audit, you use analytics, you use things like cyber scraping and specific interviews to cover specific allegations or evidence that had been uncovered. Just get the clicker back, it's a bit slow. Let me just move back. So why does internal audit miss fraud or corruption? First of all, internal audit is not designed to detect fraud or corruption in its normal way that internal audit performs. They do more or less the same procedures over every year after year. So it becomes known what will be checked. The fraudsters will know how you check your compliance, and they more or less know when it will occur. More or less the same year, same time in the year. So the ACFE report about 2 years ago stated that the average loss per annum of revenue due to fraud is about 5% globally. And this is a major risk factor to universities or to any higher education institution. It's a financial risk, severe risk. You can imagine 5% of your bottom line or of the total budget of the university is an enormous amount. And moreover, it is a reputational risk. Internal audit is predictable. If you are employed at the university for a couple of years or so, you know what they ask, you know what they want, and you know when they come to ask that. so you can prepare for your audit coming up. And then management decisions are almost never challenged. I've seen this in many investigations. Senior people being involved, university senior people being involved in transactions that are not challenged. My question is this because we are believers? Do we believe, because of the seniority of the persons involved, that it would probably be the right thing that they had done? And we move on. We approve and we move on. Often, the internal audit unit is understaffed or outnumbered. It's a mammoth task that they have to fulfill in a short space of time. Very often, which I found, different institutions where I had experienced working with, is that internal audit unit is very small to do the audit for the whole university and all its components. You can imagine. It's bound to happen that transactions will be overseen that would normally be verified and validated, but there isn't time for that. Time has become the master of internal audit. So my question is further, what you see is not what you get. We often hear the adage, what you see is what you get. I want to propose that what you see is not what you get. Why do I say that? Because it's easy to be fooled by appearances. People disguise their motives by fake transparency and smooth talking. Very often, it is accompanied by surrounding themselves with other people who are admired or who has a credible standing in society. What happens when we cannot see? What happens when we cannot see what they are doing? Let's think of the Steinhoff scandal. Let's use that as an example. The Steinhoff board, been made up with very influential people, respected members of business and society, were associated with the business. For example, astute businessman Christo Wiese was the chairperson of Steinhoff. Reputational damage to him as a person is unimaginable. But because he was there, many people believed in the good standing of the company, because he's a respected businessman. And this is what fraudsters do. They surround themselves with people who earned the respect of others. Steinhoff went ahead and acquired businesses like Pepkor, Ackermans, Timber City, to name a few reputable brands. Yet, we know now that Steinhoff crumbled in the space of a few weeks. We all know that the person at the helm of Steinhoff wasn't what we thought he was. We could not see, and we could not detect what lies beyond. So people, you might think that some person is an ethical person and he has integrity and he will do the right thing. But beware. You might be shocked to find that that very same person is not what you expected him or her to be. So, what is fraud? Because it is a conference, mostly financial people and accountants, I thought it good to throw in a few legal concepts. I will not dwell onto the definitions of fraud and how it occurs, etc., because I know that my esteemed colleagues of the DPCI will spend some time on that, and they are qualified to do so. But I want to address one specific element of fraud, which is the element of intention. And the difference in fraud and a conflict of interest. You must have intention and prove intention if you want to succeed in a prosecution of fraud. Now, intention can be inferred from something that a person did, a misrepresentation that had been made. In Latin, we call it, there must be a commitio, an active presentation of facts. Presentation that's often a lie. But it can also be an omissio, where he fails to act or disclose in circumstances where he was duty-bound to disclose. So your intention element could be a physical act, a positive action to defraud somebody, or it can be the silence of somebody who one would expect it to disclose certain set of facts in circumstances where such facts could prevent a fraud. If I could use an example, and I think this is the classic example that I've been taught at university, if you are a champion swimmer doing lifeguard duties next to the pool, and you see a toddler falling into the pool, and you do not do anything, have you committed murder? Most probably so. You can be charged for it because it is expected. You would have been duty-bound to do something, but the fact that you failed to do something when you were supposed to do something, the element of intention is then inferred, that you accepted the fate of the drowning child. And because you accepted that fact, you had the necessary intention to kill that person. But a conflict of interest is a little bit different. It can be intentional. A person can intentionally decide, I'm not going to disclose this conflict. And if he does that, he actively making a misrepresentation. But a person can also negligently fail to make that disclosure. It can be that the person reasonably thought it is not something that needs to be disclosed. It's not that much of a conflict. And the question will then be whether it is a reasonable thought. Would a reasonable person have disclosed that particular aspect? And if the answer is yes, then you will have a conflict of interest, but it can be based on negligence. A person who negligently failed to disclose. So I always urge everyone who's in a situation of disclosure where a conflict of interest must be disclosed, rather err on the side of caution and disclose everything. Do not make that decision yourself, whether you need to disclose or not. Rather disclose and let somebody else on the panel decide. So the fraud triangle is often used as an example why people defraud or commit fraud. Now I call it, this triangle, the PRO elements, and it's not for public relation officers or professional people. The PRO simply stands for pressure, rationalization, and opportunity. And with pressure, it can be monetary pressure. Person needs money. He's got a debt that he has to service. Or it can be a process pressure because he has a deadline to meet. So what he does is he fakes a document. He signs it, purporting to have checked certain transactions because he has pressure from his superiors to finalize work that was not done. It can be an ego or a vendetta pressure. It can be altruistic, meaning person wants to do good and he wants to look good and he's feeling the pressure to present himself as this wonderful caregiver, and by so doing he has pressure to commit fraud in order to do good. The typical Robin Hood, he's still a thief, even though he shares the spoils with poor people. But he had a pressure to steal because he was the idol of the poor. Is that right? No. So why they idolize Robin Hood, I really cannot understand, but let's not dwell into that. The second element is that of rationalization. Now, rationalization can be, Shwadra, can you help me there? There it comes. I don't know, it's very slow. Shwadra, can you move it one back? Back, one. No, yes, there. Keep it like that. Rationalization can be the following. Everyone is doing it. So it's not that wrong. I can bribe my way into obtaining a driver's license. Everyone does it. So I'm rationalizing. I start telling myself that it's not the end of the world. And then if there's an opportunity, that opportunity can be that the process lends itself to controls, overriding of controls, the overriding of power, or it can be in the form of a network of transactions or series of transactions that's not normally checked. So if you have these three elements together, you've got the perfect storm. Now, one would argue, why do I need to know this as a member of the internal audit team? Because you need to be on the lookout. This transaction, this unit that I'm auditing, what is the chances of this person being under pressure? And you use the outside knowledge that you have, and I will show you a bit later on that you need to adapt your audit plan to brainstorm these three elements. Make it part of your audit plan and ask yourself prior to your audit, will I be able to detect possible pressure points? A transaction that has gone through very quickly. It's been authorized, it's been approved, and the money was spent in the space of 1 day. How often does that happen in the normal circumstances of the university? I had an example, and I'm not going to give any names, but I have an example of a multi-million contract in government where the contract had been signed, the service level agreement had been signed prior to the memorandum asking that person to sign that contract being drafted. There was pressure to do the deal, and the paperwork will follow. Is that normal? No. Can it be rationalized? Of course, because people would say it was in the interest of the people, it was in the interest of the administration that this contract be signed immediately. Otherwise, we will lose out. So it was rationalized, but it's still not right. So you must ask yourself, does all of these elements perhaps exist? So how do you determine the risk? And it starts with the question, is the process aimed at proactively addressing an organization's vulnerabilities, or is it only compliance-driven? And to identify a risk, the question must be scenario-based. You must play it out and ask, is this right? And is this in terms of what is expected in terms of the normal process flow of the transactions? Are you alive to the possible mismanagement or the override to circumvent controls? Are you aware of it? Are you alive to it? Do you think about the possibility that it might happen when you perform your audit? Or are you merely checking? Is there a memorandum? Yes. Was it approved? Yes. Does the amount correlate with the amount in the memorandum? Yes. Was a requisition or a payment made? Yes. Tick tock, I've got everything ticked off, and so I'm happy to give my stamp of approval. But yet the transaction turned out to be a corrupt one or a fraudulent one. So how do you address your risk and your methodology for identifying this risk? Internal audit needs to enhance the risk assessment methodology to follow steps to ensure effective controls to identify possible risk and implement effective preventative and detection controls. And there on the slides you have a potential plan where you would identify the potential for inherent risk. You assess the likelihood of it being happening, and then if it would happen, what would the significance of that risk be? Will it be a great impact? Will it have severe consequences? And how will people react to it? And what are the likelihood of fraud being committed? And then you address your audit plan accordingly to make sure that you are able to identify and evaluate the risk resulting from the possible transaction being fraudulent. Next slide talks about some trigger thoughts. Theodore Roosevelt said, in any moment of a decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing, and the worst thing that you can do is nothing. We cannot anymore accept what is presented to us, and we must get out of our comfort zone and start asking difficult questions, how unpopular it might be, irrespective. The next topic that I want to address, I cannot do better than Professor Lumumba at the third Anti-Corruption Convention when he spoke about corruption. It's a short video of about 5 minutes, but it's extremely powerful. It speaks to every one of us and where we find ourselves And where you find yourself, you have to determine if you listen to what Professor Lumumba has to say. Thank you. Can you play the video, Shwari?
Corruption is something that we talk about. It is something that we complain about. It is something whose negative impact we recognize. It is something that even the corrupt acknowledge is a bad thing. But the irony and the tragedy at once is that those who engage in corruption love it. The tragedy at once is that those of us who do not engage in it directly accommodate it. Our levels of tolerance for corruption in Africa is amazing. A long time ago, a great Greek philosopher said that it is in the nature of man to hang the small thieves and to elect the great ones into public office. We do that in Uganda, we do that in Kenya, we do that in Tanzania, we do that in Africa. And that is why Africa remains the poorest continent on earth. I had the privilege of serving as the director of the Kenyan Anti-Corruption Commission. But it would appear that I did not understand my brief well. Upon being appointed, I assumed that my mandate was to go out there and fight the corrupt. But the truth was that I was not supposed to fight corruption. I was supposed to appear to be fighting corruption. Immediately, me and my team tried to fight corruption. The parliamentarians, in their wisdom and in my own view, in their lack of wisdom, used the occasion of the amendment of the law to disband the organization and to send myself and my 4 directors out of office. The history of anti-corruption crusaders in Africa is one and the same. Their mortality rate in office is very short. It would appear that in Africa, if you serve your full term, it is because you have refused to fight corruption. So the question that we must ask here and now, on an occasion such as this, what must Africa do going forward? It gives me great joy that you Ugandans have moved from the drawing table and you have now chosen to go out there to do that which is right and good, so that they may realize that corruption is a cancer that must not be allowed to grow. But I want to use this occasion to remind you that it's not going to be easy. The children of darkness, who are the perpetrators of corruption, have one advantage over the children of light. They are well organized. They are prepared to kill. They are prepared to do anything on earth to ensure that their ill-gotten wealth is retained and protected. And you can go to different African countries. The tragedy of Africa is that Africans are in the business of canonizing thieves and demonizing its saints. This question is, you who are present in this assembly, what is it that we must do? Because corruption is alive and well in our communities. The question is, are we going to gain Africa by mere pronouncements, or we must change ourselves? We must change our behavioral DNA so that we are no longer attracted to that which is good, bad, and evil. The question is, are we ready? The question is, do we say with our mouth what we do not believe in our hearts? The question is, are we going to wait for outsiders to tell us to do that which we ought to have done? The question is, are we children of a lesser God? No, we are not. But we have allowed ourselves to be corrupted in our morals and in our ways. Our leaders steal from us. and they keep money in Europe and America. They can't keep it in Africa. The question is, for how long shall we allow this to happen? If we want to liberate ourselves from the chains of suffering, we must do something about it. And I remember that lady saying that when you walk into a dark room and you find that there is darkness inside of the room, you don't complain about the darkness. You take a candle and light the candle and ask your neighbor to light a candle. And lo and behold, when all of us have lit the candle, the room will be consumed in light. But let me tell you, having participated in the fight against corruption, I know a number of things. I know that good laws in and of themselves will not fight corruption. So we must have something, we must have a change of heart. We must have something which in Latin is called conversatio morum, a change of heart, a total change, a DNA transplant, a character transplant, so that our dominant instinct becomes the instinct to do that which is good and right. And I have no doubt that it can be done and that it will be done, because if it is not done, we are done. Ladies and gentlemen, may God bless.
So, a very powerful speech, and it speaks to each and every one of us who fight the fight against fraud and corruption. We must change our mindset. We must develop a questioning mindset. And instead of verifying, we must start validating. We must be more skeptical of transactions and place more emphasis on the why and not so much on the how a transaction was performed. And we should never provide somebody with a benefit of doubt. We should not be scared to become unpopular. I conclude by showing a picture of President Reagan, President Gorbachev, and with the saying, trust but verify, that's been used by President Reagan in his talks with Gorbachev on the nuclear disarmament. Gorbachev urged that they will disarm the nuclear weapons and they will provide a list. And the reply of Reagan was, we will come and verify. And then Gorbachev asked, why is it necessary? And Russians like to talk in proverbs. And this particular proverb, trust but verify, is a Russian proverb. And the reply by Reagan was, Mr. Gorbachev, we trust, but we verify. So we must stop being believers. We must be risk conscious. And we must start verifying and validating. In a news conference in 2013, the Secretary of State, John Kerry, at the time said that this adage, trust but verify, must be updated to read verify and verify. If it could work for world peace, it could work for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that insightful speech. Really enjoyed it. Maybe I can just add, Advocate mentioned a lot the auditors, but I can just tell you we are 9 people in the unit. 2 of them are special investigations. I'm in investigation and in audit. The 2 of them are doing continuous monitoring. So we only sit we only are left with 5 people to really do audits in the university, and we are really outnumbered and understaffed. So that's why we really rely on the fiscal officers and the managers across the whole university to be our auditors, that we can really place reliance on, that you can assist us, and that's why we're doing this awareness session, so that you can be aware of what you must verify, not just trust. And as soon as we get all of the fiscal officers and all of the managers to join us and report these instances to us, we can at least make a bigger impact. So from my side, he said a lot about auditors, but you are all the auditors of the university. You are the assistants to us as auditors. Okay, maybe I just also want to mention that at some stage there are a difference between internal audit and special investigations due to the focus that Advocate also explained, and that's why maybe probably the special investigation unit will now split from us, because audit is actually there to improve governance, risk and controls within the university environment and really get the assistance and the trust from our stakeholders, I can call that. Whereas the special investigators, and usually I see it a lot, when we enter into a room or we come down the passage, people normally just want to, what are they investigating? And they pull back. From the audit side, we actually want to get the assistance and we really want to help them. So that's why we can't do both of these roles, and it's very difficult to do that. Okay, and really, trust but verify. I know Said uses that a lot. Trust but verify. We usually trust all the people, but we always verify, and that's the main purpose. So, okay, thank you very much. Maybe I will allow a 5 minute stretch, but I don't want you to go out of the room. Otherwise, we will take 15 minutes. So maybe if you can just stretch your leg and just meet the people around you. Yeah, and we can have questions. Thank you, James. James has a question, that's why.
It's not a question, it's a statement. If someone walks into our office with a CETA grant, or it must be signed now because the date of the budget closes tomorrow or whatever, then there must be red flags going up all over the show. And that's a very important point. I've never lost a grant at this institution because it was signed late. Quite the opposite, it's signed 6 months later. So if someone puts something under that line manager or contracts owner's nose and say, sign now, I didn't have time to send it to legal, I didn't have time to send it to finance or the tech transfer office, sign now, then you must know. All lights must go red.
And usually people use that. They know just before you go on leave, you are in that state, you just want to finalize it, and now they want you to sign off a lot of payments. So be aware. It's usually that pressure, rationalization, and weak controls. If you are weak control in your department, you don't do your job and responsibility as a fiscal officer or as a manager, the controls are weak. If they have the pressure, economic pressure, they have economic problems in their, financial problems in their own household, then it's easy to become pressurized. And then you rationalize yourself. I know a lot of people that rationalize because they have a sick child, because they have a husband who cannot get work. And then, unfortunately, that also leads to pressure. So be aware of your environment and where you work from. Okay, other questions or statements? Online? Do we have online questions? Do you see any hands? So you are all online. You are also in the room. So if you have questions, you can also post it in the chat box or ask questions if you want. The session this year is a little bit different to the previous year, where we went in a lot of definitions and explaining more of the stuff. But I think at this stage, the Hawks they are working in close collaboration with internal audit currently, and you will see all over the news where there's things happening at universities and where a lot of millions and millions of money is lost due to weak controls. And actually, it's our people that's processing these transactions and not keep these people accountable for what is happening in the environment. If you don't do a reconciliation, if you don't check, if you just sign off and you ask no questions, it's going to become a problem. And I think in future it's going to be more of a problem. We see it in a lot of the universities. A lot of universities are currently suffering financially due to what happened in the environment. If the money is lost and the money is gone, it's gone. You will not be able to recover it. And it takes a lot of money to even go and recover it. So please. Okay. So I will allow 5 minutes, just a break if you want to go and fetch a coffee quickly, those of the online people, and then we will continue with the hawks. They are in the room and we want to really listen to them as well.
Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone. I think the 5 minutes already passed. So our next presenter is Captain Moholo from the Priority Crime Specialized Investigation within the Hawks. He's a commercial forensic practitioner and a certified fraud examiner, responsible for financial crime, money laundering, and investigations. The Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations, in short the DPCI, commonly known as the Hawks, is a specialized unit within the South African Police Services. Established in 2008, the Hawks are tasked with investigation and combating serious and organized crime, economic crime, corruption, and other high-priority crimes. The key functions of the Hawks is investigation, organized crime, and exposing syndicates, and we see that a lot currently, even in our investigations. Investigating financial crimes, including fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion, addressing corruption within both the public and private sectors. The Hawks operate from both national and provincial offices, ensuring a wide reach across South Africa, and have various specialized units focusing on different types of crimes. They work closely with other law enforcement agencies, both locally and internationally, to effectively combat crime, and as we all know, play a crucial role in maintaining law and order in South Africa by focusing on high-impact crimes that threaten the country's stability and economic integrity. So that's why you're very important this morning, and thank you for your time to attend this session as well, and also to present. Okay, a warm welcome to Colonel Matabula. Captain, sorry, that was the Captain, yeah, Maholo. He can introduce his wingmen. I know there's two other people also in the room from the Hawks. Maybe you can also just introduce them to us.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. As indicated, I'm Captain Mpolo from the Hawks. I am with Lieutenant Colonel Matebula and with Warrant Officer Malwezi. We are from the DPCI in Klerksdorp. We are the provincial office for Northwest. As indicated, the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation is a independent directorate within the South African Police Service that was established in terms of South African Police Service Act, Section 17D. The directorate was established to prevent, to combat, and investigate serious organized crime, serious commercial crime, and serious corruption, to address crime that requires special skills in the prevention or investigation thereof, as referred to in Section 16, subsection 1 of the South African Police Service Act, to address high-level criminal enterprises through threat-based, project-driven investigations and focus on the business systems of the crime, optimal utilization of all legal instruments by embracing an integrated and multidisciplinary approach, investigate criminal activities in respect of procurement, corruption, and fraud within public and private sectors. The operational objectives of the DPCI is to establish and maintain partnership with relevant stakeholders to assist DPCI to promote awareness and expand the detection of serious crime amongst affected entities and sectors, and to establish a whole of government and societal approach to enhance the detection and prioritization of national priority offenses, to resolve the prioritized crime threats through effective prevention, combating, and investigation, to develop and maintain integrated operational methodologies, strategies, and plans to address the authorized national priority offenses diversify the fight against serious crime through targeted national priority offenses operations by diversifying the outputs towards dismantling and disrupting criminal activities and systems and enforcement of legal consequences. Operationalize the multidisciplinary governance by taking a collaborative approach to address serious crime and collective concern. Serious crime of collective concern. Matters to be investigated by the DPCI. We indicated these national priority crimes, which include serious commercial crime, serious corruption, and serious organized crime investigation. Under serious commercial crime, we investigate crimes of serious commercial nature to the accumulative value of 500,000 or more. And under serious corruption investigation, we investigate corruption cases within the public and private sectors to the value of 100,000 or more. And under organized crime, the responsibility is to address the crimes that are sophisticated, that are complex, crimes that are mentioned under Section 16, subsection 1 of the South African Police Service Act. As amended by the South African Police Service Amendment Act of 2012, the reporting of the national priority offenses should be made to a police official in the Directorate of Priority Crime Investigation in terms of Section 34 of the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act. As indicated, one of the investigations that we do are related to corruption, which is that will be explained later. But under Section 34, there are reporting obligations of certain individuals who are obliged to report the offenses of crimes such as corruption or theft or fraud to the value of 100,000 or more. And one of those people with regard to universities will be any head of the university, would be director of the university, or the principal of any tertiary institution. So a reporting can be made to an email that you see there, corruptionreports@saps.gov.za. If it would be directed to Northwest, would be corruptionreports.nw@saps.gov.za. A telephonic reporting can also be made, but preferably email. Email is preferred. And a reporting official will need to disclose their identity, contact details, the position of authority, the allegations that are being reported, the details of persons involved in the alleged commission of offense. This disclosing of this information, I want you to understand that is when a person is obliged under Section 34. It's not a whistleblowing reporting whereby we say a person would like to remain anonymous. Fraud and corruption, they affect or can affect anybody, individuals, organizations, universities, big corporations, and universities. And Northwest University would be one of those victims. And I can confirm that at least 9 cases are under investigation by the Directorate in Northwest. whereby the university was a victim. However, it's a principle that I should not disclose the merits of the cases under investigation or the cases that are before the court. But these cases are investigated. And the previous speaker has touched on some of the important facts that I would touch on. Why would people commit fraud? The fraud triangle, who are the perpetrators of the fraud, who can assist in fraud detection, fraud investigation, fraud prevention. Before I get to that, I will get to that. The definition of fraud is unlawful and intentional making of misrepresentation that causes prejudice to another person. So when a crime or allegations are reported to the Directorate of South African Police Service, these elements we do verify if they are present in the allegations, that the action that was done by somebody, is it unlawful, is it against a common law or against a certain statute? Did somebody contravene a certain statute? And was the action by the person intentional, or it was negligent, or it was omission? And what did the person do? Did they misrepresent to somebody else? And are we able to quantify the prejudice? Prejudice could be monetary. We have actual prejudice or potential prejudice. And actual prejudice will be an instance whereby a person would say, so much money has been paid by a victim organization due to fraud. Maybe 500,000 has been paid. A potential one would be the instance whereby the perpetrator has done everything on their side to perpetuate the fraud, but prior to it be actually paid, that maybe is detected. An example would be whereby a person prepares an invoice and submit it for payment, and then the payment would be on Friday, and it's waiting for payment on Friday. But prior to that, maybe internal audit, they detect, and then they stop it before it actually being paid. That would be a potential fraud. It is not an attempted one, it's a full fraud, a complete fraud, which is still which still needs to be reported as fraud. Under fraud, yes, we will have common law fraud and we'll have statutory frauds. Common law fraud, this would be the definition, but under the statutory would have contravention of certain statutes or Companies Act or contravention of certain sections in the Cybercrime Act. We have a lot of acts. A lot of them would have Electronic Communications and Transactions Act. We have Close Corporations Act. We have Competitions Act. If you contravene any of the sections or the statute, the crime would still classify it as fraud, but the contravention of a certain statute. Corruption. Corruption is unlawful and intentional giving or receiving of a gratification that is not legally due to somebody else. The giving could be a promise to give, and receiving could be a promise to receive, even if you did not actually receive or you did not actually give. If we could prove that you had promised somebody to give or to receive, a gratification that would amount to corruption. And the giving or receiving would be a gratification. And there's a wide definition of gratification. It's not limited to the ones I put there. That would include money given to somebody who is in possession of authority to do certain acts that he is not allowed to do, but he's in a position of authority to allow those acts. Could be sexual favors, could be gifts. Some of the people would receive gifts for their good performance, but there could be a company or organization policy that say gifts should be declared, and if a person received the gift and failed to declare, that could amount to corruption. And some of the gratification would be in the form of holidays given to the people who has assisted in crime or fraud. Sometimes we say in the offense of corruption would have two actors, the one who would be a corruptee and the other one would be a corrupter. So it happens that the corruptee would pay maybe holidays or vacations for somebody who was maybe authorizing the tender to a certain person or a company, and as a form of kickback, and this corruptee would pay in the form of a holiday or vacation. Or we might not see it because it would not be paid directly to them, but it might be paid directly to a hotel or to an event planner, whatever the circumstance might be. Some of the fraud schemes perpetrated by the fraudsters. And when you talk about the fraudsters, we're not talking about somebody who has the horns or has a label written, I'm a fraudster. We're talking about individuals that are like us. There are characteristics of fraudsters, and you would find senior people in those schemes, you'd find educated people. So the schemes, some of them that they would perpetrate would be travel claims. Somebody will be claiming to say they are going to visit maybe Mahigan campus. Maybe they are using their private vehicle and they claim the kilometers that they travel using their vehicle, and whereas they did not in fact travel to that other campus or a destination, and they would submit a claim for that. Some, yes, would travel but will inflate the claims. Some will book in cheaper vacations. When you travel, you might be allowed to sleep at a guest house, and the guest house maybe is 1,000 rand, but they will inflate the invoice to make it more to be 2,000 rand instead of 1,000 rand. Those will be the travel claims that are perpetrated by the fraudsters. Here I'm talking about the fraudsters within. We can have fraudsters inside an organization and those that are outside an organization. There are billing schemes whereby the fraudster would create the invoices and bill the institution or an organization, and then the institution would pay according to the invoice that was submitted, and then the payment would be made to, at times, the fraudsters would establish a shell company that is used specifically for this purpose. It does not have any other activities except for fraudulent activities. and a victim organization would be paying money into the shell companies. So billing schemes could be perpetrated together with shell companies because the money would need to be paid to a company, for example. Some of the schemes would be business email compromise, whereby mostly an organization would communicate by emails, and an email from a senior authority would be spoofed, would be forged by a fraudster to look similar to that of maybe a COO or a rector or a principal or a head of the university, that would be sent maybe to an official in the finance department for them to make a payment for a certain invoice or a payment to a certain account. And because sometimes employees would be afraid, scared of senior people where there's no culture of openness, and they have to act on the orders of a senior person to the detriment of an organization, find that actually the email, when we investigate, the email was actually not from within the organization, but it could be from a fraudster outside the organization. Yet it happens that an external fraudster would have a link to somebody who is within the organization. That happens as well. Would have other schemes whereby the payee details of a service provider would be changed or altered, and the account number of a fraudster or fraudulent account will be loaded on a payment system, whereby instead of paying Mr. Adams Pty Ltd, the money is being paid, yes, to Mr. Adams Pty Ltd, but a different account from the one which has been loaded on the system. And maybe a month or 2 months later, when Adams Pty Ltd inquire from the university to say, I've submitted an invoice or I've not been receiving payments for my invoices. When you check on the system, you find that yes, Adam P12 Ltd had been paid, but yes, to a different account, and that would cause the case to be reported and that account that was loaded to be investigated. And the investigation will also establish as to who changed the payee details, who had authority to do that, who had the privileges to do that. Yes, these schemes that I mentioned would be detected by the internal audit activity in organizations. And with regard to Northwest University, yes, I confirm that the internal audit activity had been playing a critical role in identifying or detecting some of their fraudulent schemes, and they would lay a criminal case with the South African Police Service, and the case would be investigated by the Directorate. And as part of ongoing investigations, the internal audit activity, they play a critical role in supporting the ongoing investigations. During the investigation, you might need to find the information about who is the service provider, Adams Pty Ltd, when was the service provider loaded on the system, when were the payee details modified, and who had access to modify the payee details. So they do assist in that regard, reporting and ongoing support on the investigations. The prevention methods that could be used to mitigate the risk of fraud. And we say there are no absolute methods, but the methods that are available, they only mitigate. There is no one who is not immune to fraud, but based on the methodologies or modus operandi identified, we found the following to be or could have been more important to mitigate the occurrences of fraud. But before you prevent the fraud, you need to be aware of what would motivate people to perpetuate the fraud. The previous speaker has identified the fraud triangle, but in addition to the fraud angle, we have four motives. Each individual will have their own motives, but in summarizing the motives that the people might have, we found the greed to be playing an important role, compelling people to commit fraud. Greed is something that a person wants, even if they don't need. A person is having a vehicle, but they need a second vehicle. They want a second vehicle, not need. They have this and they just want more. So the people would now approach fraudulent methods in order for them to get money. There would be also opportunities. If people have opportunity to commit fraud, they would commit fraud. There is a well-researched statistic of 10-80-10 that say out of 100% that you'd have of employees, you would have 10% that will be incorruptible. No matter what you do, you would not induce them to commit fraud or corruption. And you would have another 10% of people or employees that no matter what you do to satisfy them, they will actively look for a way of committing fraud. And then you'd have these 80% people that will depend whether they fall on the other side or they fall on the other side. That will be depending on the environment that is prevailing, the culture in that organization or university, how you treat people, all those. So understanding why would people commit fraud would help in putting measures in place. We have the need. Yes, some of people would have a legitimate need why they would perpetuate fraud. I'm not saying if the need is legitimate that they have the right to commit fraud, but some would have financial pressures. They would need to pay medical bills for their families or for their own, and they see opportunity. And if there's opportunity, yes, they would commit fraud. It says even people who are honest but presented with opportunity, people can fall to that trap of committing fraud. And then we have lack of ethics. Lack of ethics, as I indicated, would have 10% of people who, no matter what you do, they would go all the way to look for ways to commit fraud. So segregation of duties plays an important role in preventing fraud. We do not need to have people who have superpowers. A person who would create invoice, submit invoice for payment, capture the invoice on the system, authorize that invoice, and initiate payment on the invoice. If you segregate the duties amongst the employees, that would prevent or mitigate at least the risk of fraud. Although segregation of duties can be countered by employees' collusion, but if one has captured the invoice and then it needs to be authorized by the other, since we said if the environment is good in order to counter fraud, If you have 80% of people plus 10%, which is 90%, against the corruptible 10%. So it's unlikely that a fraudster would have somebody that they will collude with. So segregating of duties coupled with good working environment would assist to mitigate or prevent the fraud. Training employees is another preventative method. Normally, when employees are onboarded, they would be trained about the policies within the organization, what they must do, what they must not do, who to report to if they identify a suspicious behavior. But you find that this training happens when new employees join and is not continuous. It would be better if it is done on a continuous basis, even for employees that are already within. Employees need to be trained on ethics. You would find that the employees, they do subscribe. There are policies within the organization within the organizations that the employees subscribe to, and periodically they need to sign that they do understand. What you would find is that you find that they are just being given the papers to sign, the papers that would contain the policies, and people would sign without even understanding. For example, I know we are from different religions, but some of people would go to church, and you find that in church, out of a thick paged Bible, the pastor would quote one verse and he would preach about 1 hour regarding that verse, the background regarding the message in that verse and how does it affect the people currently. If that would happen regarding the policies and regarding the code of conduct, I think that would help rather than giving people a paper that lists the policies without them understanding. If you would ask the employees to say, what is it that you understand about the sentence in the policy? What do you suggest? Is the policy okay? Does it need to be reviewed? Employees need to be trained regarding that. They also need to be trained regarding what actions constitute fraud. As I mentioned, the elements of fraud, you find that these elements are only known by those who practice them. Like the police officers would come to the police station and report the case, then the police say, no, not all elements are there, so there is no case. Although, yes, you are complaining about a certain thing, but because all the elements are not there, it does not constitute a certain crime. So if employees would be trained to say, this is what we mean when we say it's fraud, or this is what we mean when we say it constitutes unethical behavior, rather than just giving them a piece of paper for them to read on their own and sign. And you'd find that there's agency or pressure put on the employees for them to sign those code of conducts or policies because a certain department or internal audit department or integrity department needs those declarations to have been signed. At times, yes, we would ask people to declare their interest in certain things, or to declare the gifts that they have received, but the policy does not state at what point should one declare. We mentioned an element of opportunity that would compel somebody to commit a fraud. Must I first receive a benefit and then go and declare it? When do I declare? Yearly? If I receive something in January, then I will only declare it in December. And if I see opportunity that there's nobody who has seen me that I received a benefit, then I will not declare in December. So those policies need to be clear and be conveyed to the employees that they understand. Or should I first declare that someone has promised me a gift and then a certain department allow me to go and collect a gift? That need to be cleared, and employees be trained. Because you'd find that the employee has received a benefit, but the declaring period has not reached. Said, yes, I received it, but I'm still going to declare because the declaration period is during December. We also need to have fraud awareness campaigns like these ones. We have International Fraud Awareness Week, the initiative by the university to engage and participate in the Fraud Awareness Week is one of the way to teach the employees or colleagues or even the fellow learners about the frauds. There are many frauds that are, or type of frauds that are perpetuated in universities. It could be a refund to a learner or a learner who does not exist. It could be a service provider that is providing services to the university. It could be any form of fraud perpetuated against the university. And fraud, we understand that it affects everybody. Previous speaker has indicated that the amounts or quantity of money lost through frauds would amount, according to ACFE, at least 5% of the annual revenue. That is a lot of money, and it would be at least diverted to other activities other than preventing or losing money to fraud or investigating fraud. So prevention is very important because the consequences of fraud, once it occurs, they are bigger than what we could think. There are reputational risks that are there. There are job losses because if an organization will lose money to fraud, you find that it's no longer able to survive and it has to close. And if it closes, the employees would lose their job. It will affect their families. It also happens that you find that the perpetrators are senior officials within an university or an organization. And once the allegation surfaces, it also affects the individual, the same perpetrator, and their families. So the consequences of fraud are not good for anybody. The contact details, as I indicated, the Hawks or the Directorate is dealing with the offenses of serious corruption investigation, serious commercial crime investigation, and serious organized crime investigations. We have to have the contact number for the provincial commander, who's Brigadier Monjezi. The contact number is there and the email address is displayed. We have the provincial commander for serious commercial crime investigation, which is Brigadier Maponya. The email is displayed plus the contact numbers. And we have Brigadier Malema, who is the acting serious organized crime investigation commander. The email address is there and the telephone numbers are there. And that is the end of the presentation, but I would welcome questions if there are any, and I'm willing to respond to the extent that they do not reveal the cases under investigations and those that are before the court. But you are welcome to send the questions through. Thank you very much.
Any questions to the Hawks while we have them here? From the online? Seems there's an online question.
It's an online question. Manfredi asked, what if the invoice does not have the university's information on? And then when you ask it, or when you ask the request, the initiator to add it, but then when the initiator sends back the invoice in less than 5 minutes, the invoice that then does have the university details on. My question is, how will you know if the initiator changed and added the info on the invoice?
Yeah, and that's the invoice that you received from a supplier.
Yeah, what he's basically asking is, with the initiator sends the invoice or uploads the invoice, but it does not have the university details on it. And then if you request the initiator, maybe to ask why they send a new invoice, and then in 5 minutes or less than 5 minutes, the new invoice then comes with the university details. Our question is, how will you know if the initiator changed it or added the information on the invoice?
Okay, thank you very much. That would be what would be detected within prior to a fraud being perpetrated. But somebody to submit an invoice, they actually saying they have rendered the services. So there need to be check and balances. Not one person, as indicated, should have superpowers to accept, to capture, to authorize, and make a payment. So there would be somebody who would have certified that this service provider has rendered the services and need to be paid. Even if the invoice looks illegitimate, but there are things that would need to check on the invoice. The payee details is that account number on the invoice the same as the account number that we already have on the payment system. And this work or this activity will not be done by one person, but there need to be a person who need to verify. Firstly, there would be end user who received the services that would certify that the services that we requested, yes, we received them to the satisfaction that we know that they will do what we need them to do. There will be management that are authorizing the payment. There will be a person verifying the invoice. But in these instances, the invoice is still being issued, but the services would have been rendered already prior to the invoice being issued. So there should be checks and balances.
Yeah, and actually, internal personnel member are not allowed to make changes to a supplier's invoice. So I think that's more what it's more referring to. Now, we don't want to accept the invoice because the VAT numbers of the university was not indicated from the supplier side on the invoice, and now the fiscal officer or the person processing the transaction put that information on the invoice. You are not allowed to change suppliers' invoices and the information that they supply to you. And also, please don't assist them to create invoices on their behalf. Because sometimes we have someone that delivered a service and now they don't have invoices, which is already very questionable. And then people on the inside of the university creates invoices for them. If you at all doubt the invoice, please make use. We all have access to Google. Verify the company's name. Verify if they have a web address. Verify if there's photos on the address. Verify if you can look at the property, the street address. Verify that. You can even use the image to see, is this business really in that Hoffman Street 11? So there's a lot of things that we can that employees can use to verify certain invoices and transactions. There was a question.
Want to add to Madel's question is, yes, we trust that the supplier has now in 5 minutes added that information that was requested, but how do we verify that that supplier actually did the changes that was requested on the invoice?
I think as a financial officer, you should do that independently. Maybe just make a phone call. Where did you get the invoice? From an employee or from the service supplier himself? Themselves.
It would have been uploaded then
already on the system.
KFS as the additional requested document.
and now someone adds a second invoice with that information on it. If you are the fiscal officer, I think you should just verify who added that information, because it should not be an employee of the university.
Yeah, I think as a verification, one must be very conscious not to contact the person in your verification by using the contact details that are on that particular invoice that you are suspecting. Because we often see in our environment that a verification is done, but they use the contact details on the suspected document to verify, which is a common mistake made by a lot of people. So as Madeleine suggests, that rather Google the company, get the contact details, and then make an independent call to that service provider and verify the service provider's services, and then the change in the invoice details.
Then I also want to speak a little bit to conflict of interest, which you also referred to. People usually now say, okay, I have to declare when I am a director of a company doing business with a university, and then they declare. But if when you process a transaction and there are a conflict of interest or involvement with that company, you should also, in the procurement process, make a declaration. So say, for instance, your brother-in-law or son-in-law is part of the business transaction, rather declare it to your manager and then follow up if there is a real conflict of interest. Because a lot of people now just say, I was not the director of the company, so I don't have to declare. But still, they have a conflict of interest in the business transaction. So they should also declare it as part of the purchasing process. And then also, please be aware, a lot of we get a lot of these more regularly conferences. You get these emails from the outside conference, Advanced Excel, and all of us wants to go on an Advanced Excel course. And then actually, it's just a fake invoice marketing, and people engage and pay over the money. And in a month's time, when they visit the place where they want to attend the training, there's no training, even virtual, even if it's face to face. So please be aware that if you want to do training, that it is a reputable trainer and service provider. And that you can also check. Just check the information on the invoice to see if they're a real company, if you get other references of this company or training provider on Google. Then also, I just want to warn you, be careful when you do this verifications or verify information with the people on the other side of the email or the telephone number that they supplied. Don't phone that telephone number. If there's a suspicion, don't phone that email directly. Try to see if you can get hold of someone else that you can verify the transaction, because a perpetrator will put their own contact details on that invoice. And you will try to verify with them, and they are waiting for your call. They're waiting for your call. And they will make everything is fine. As if everything is fine. Okay, then, yeah, so you can actually verify a VAT number easily on Google. You can verify addresses, properties, Google Maps. Use Google Maps. Go into the street address and see. Look into if these people have a web address. If there's no web address and you can't see it's the property is real, then maybe you should ask a few other questions as well. If it's not a service supplier that you know about, what we are currently doing in the continuous monitoring environment is to actually also build in some tests that we can verify what OUs, owners use only certain service providers and no one else uses them. Because why? If there's a lot of people that you can supply you with computers or stationery, why do you want to go to APC computers? Just ask the question, why don't we go to the Bluetex or the NB Enterprise or the normal suppliers that the university use? Okay, thank you so much, Captain. We really appreciate your presentation and the insights, and thank you for all the hard work that you do. Also, the fight and how you expose crime and corruption and the fight against corruption. We really appreciate that. And sometimes it's also a very dangerous environment to be in. Even in our special investigation unit, when they are busy with investigations, they can get bribes, they can get, well, not kickbacks, hopefully not, no kickbacks, but people even try to use these people that's doing the investigations to get them to cooperate with them. So you should be very aware. Okay, then to all the attendees, I'm deeply grateful for your participation. I would have liked some more questions, but maybe the questions will come afterwards. Usually we experience that once we prevented a fraud awareness session, we receive a lot of emails and people that wants to verify stuff with us. So please send us the emails and the inquiries. We will just verify and also try to assist you in that regard. Okay, these sessions were previously presented every second year, but now it's annually. Due also to the fact that there's an increased number of investigations and then also the economic climate in South Africa and in the university. So we really appreciate when people just make a phone call, just try to verify. We can easily, they know all the tricks in the book. Not all the tricks, but a lot of the tricks in the book, and they can really assist you in that regard as well. Okay, so we, like I already said, we would like all of the people of the university attending these awareness sessions and being fiscal officers and managers to be our eyes and ears in the broader community, university community, and on the different campuses. If we don't, we cannot visit all the areas. So if you can be our eyes and ears and report this instances to us, we can follow up on those. Then to my two investigators. Sorry? Question? Yeah. If there's still another question?
Okay, here's another question from Angelo Howard. He asked, how long does an investigation take on average?
I'm very thankful to the two people sitting here. There are two people in the university that are running 45 to 55 cases on a daily basis because once they give out reports for the rest, the new cases comes in. So usually about between 45 to 55 cases, some of them serious, and then they focus on mainly on those investigations and the others stay behind. So sometimes it can take 9 months, 12 months even, if it's not that high priority. They also should prioritize their investigations. So the bigger investigations gets their attention first. So sorry if sometimes people report things to us and they say, this is the facts, just write your report, but it's actually not that easy. We have to verify all the facts and it should be able to go through the court and everything. So there must be witnesses, there must be evidence, third-party verification of evidence. So it's not that you report something and we just write a report and then we report writers. They're not report writers, they are investigators. So they must look at the extent of what is happening in that environment, because if there's only one transaction that you point out, maybe it can be much larger. And usually that's where as soon as they looking through the evidence, something else comes into the picture. And they have to verify everything until when they issue their report. So sorry for that. Some cases takes long. We really try to keep it within 90 days, 3 months. But even the last year, I know that it takes a lot longer. And sometimes the people get very frustrated with them, but they're only two. Just remember that for all the cases at the university. Okay, I also want to thank them for the arrangements of these of the sessions today and the hard work and dedication. They are really overworked. They put in a lot of hours, even after hours, to do verifications. And then also, but they get their energy. Every time they get a new piece of evidence or everything, or when there's a puzzle that fits into the bigger picture, they get their energy from that. It creates excitement for that. And but yeah, I don't think it's an easy task. They keep me busy a lot as well. But yeah, and I keep legal services busy, and I keep employee relations busy. And apart from only the investigations, they still have to go and testify on a CMA case, a court case, and yeah, even the disciplinary hearings. After disciplinary hearing, the people usually go to CCMA, then we have to attend the court cases too. So a lot of their time, sometimes 5 hours in a day, they're sitting in hearings. So a lot of time spent on these investigations, and that's why we maybe also want to split the unit so that they can be capacitated to their full extent. Okay, thank you so much. That's from my side. Yeah, and then just let's all therefore work together to create a safer, fraud-free environment. Your participation is essential to making this week a success, and even afterwards when you report to us. Stay informed, stay alert, and let's fight fraud together. So that's from my side. Okay. Asifu. Picture verified with a serial number, and maybe even we'll put in a system to also help us to verify that. Because how many computers was stolen this year? Laptops? 30? How much? 35 to 40 laptops being stolen out of offices. So there's a lot of information on that computers that get stolen, and sometimes even when they do their investigations, all of a sudden the computer are lost. So that's very strange. But yes, there's a lot of information on that computers as well. From your side, protection services, what's your experience in the environment?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairperson. And good morning to everybody. I think we serve as a support function to internal audit. We link up with them and assist them with statement taking to ensure that we are to assist them. So we serve as a support function because, in terms of our mandate, we're more physical security. And we do link up with all the other stakeholders, including, that are on our campuses, from Danika's office, student life, residence and catering, because those are the areas in which we operate. And we serve to supplement whatever they do. And they have the expertise to follow the money, and we don't. So all we do is obtain the affidavits and so forth, so that will serve to initiate the investigation. And our focus is mainly on focusing on the infrastructure and keeping our campus communities safe and secure. GBV is also something very serious and high on the agenda, and we spend a lot of time on that. And then obviously common law crimes that are being committed on our campuses. But in terms of our relationship, especially with fraud matters, as soon as we become aware, we immediately inform and activate your department. So I think we've got a very close and warm relationship, and we work in synergy with each other. Thank you.
Where internal audit is internal compliance, our responsibility is towards our insurers and our university vis-a-vis third parties. So it's important for us, for you guys to be our eyes, to know that before a contract's been signed, that we have had an eye on the judicial content. Because there may be indemnities in there, we want an anti-corruption clause, we want various sort of clauses. We never interfere with your financial matters or your operational or your strategic involvement, but we want to see the legal jargon. And that's our role, because we don't act for employees individually. We act for the legal persona as the Northwest University. And we work every day with internal audit and my two favorite inspectors here. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation today.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes in the investigation we usually follow up on is there a contract with the outside party, and in a lot of the cases there's no contracts, or the contracts did not go through legal office, or it was a previous contract that they used 3 years ago and they just changed the contents and then it didn't go through legal services. So just take cognitions of that as well. Okay. Thank you everyone.
Yeah.
Well, en dan wil ek nou gou-gou woord dis nie te
Sorry, colleagues. I just want, on behalf of the internal audit, I just want to thank the Hawks, Lieutenant Matibula, Captain Polo, and Warrant Officer Malwetsi, and also Mr. Advocate Labuskafni. And then, as a thank you gift from our side, we just have a small gift. It's not Christmas yet, but this can serve as a early Christmas present. So I want to thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Francois. Yeah, thank you, colleagues.